Motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, Tara, and Happy New Year. This is our first episode of 2026. I hope that you had an awesome holiday season and you are ready for all the magical things that the new year is going to bring. Today's Modern Mom Problem is domestic labor equity. That is a big one. I am joined by Laura Danger. She is an educator, a content creator, an author. She is a fair play facilitator. She has a new book out called No More Mediocre, a call to reimagine our relationships and demand more. You probably know Laura from her TikTok account and her Instagram account, That Darn Chat. She is an absolute gem and so knowledgeable about this particular topic. I'm so excited for you to hear more from her. So without further ado, Laura, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. I feel like we're matching. I'm wearing a black sweatshirt and you're also wearing a black shirt. We got like the memo of like the cuddly, cold, it's winter time. We just want to be cuddly on the couch kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's the uniform all winter.
All winter. I literally don't get out of my sweatpants all winter. Not the same pair, like different pairs of sweatpants, but
I wouldn't judge you either way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. This is a non-judgmental zone. This is no judging over here. Mm-hmm. So if we want to wear our sweatpants every day, we could wear our sweatpants every day. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about, we're here to talk about a lot of different things. But before we jump into that, Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing the work that you do.
All right. Where to begin? I was born so how did I get started? Well, first of all, I am a mom. I am married. I've been married to my husband for, I don't know. We started dating in 2009. We've been together for a long time.
It's been a minute.
And I mean, I have a similar story to that of very many women. I found myself in a position of doing more domestic labor in my partnership than I had expected. My husband and I are both like feminist, we signed on for equality, equity, all that stuff, very socially, all into that. And still in our household, there was a lot of imbalance. There was a lot of friction and tension around the things so many people argue about, which is the chores and the childcare and all of that. And so I had that very common experience then. I had a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old when we entered into lockdowns in 2020. And again, I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people, but it was like an explosion of labor, of like every fracture was pushed on. It was like a bruise.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way to describe it.
Oh yeah. Pressure on that bruise. Just ouch, ouch, ouch.
Yeah. You're just like really putting your thumb in there. You really feel it.
Yes. So I get, my husband and I, it's a little bit messy, and I get into this in my book, which is, out today. Yeah. I'm going to show it right here. Ta-da! No More Mediocre.
So exciting. We're going to talk about that.
So like, we kind of hit this messy point in our relationship, and the pandemic is happening, and we had this breaking point. I had a breaking point. Our relationship really changed, and we had like a wiping clean of the slate and totally having a different relationship. I started changing my relationship to work. I changed my relationship to my identity, motherhood, partnership, and my whole worldview really shifted. It was like a a moment. Again, I think a lot of this is resonant with a lot of
super
people.
relatable, super relatable. There are so many content creators that I know personally who really exploded during the pandemic because they were talking about these struggles. So it was a very relatable topic at the time, and even still, obviously.
Yeah, it really is. And that is what got things started for me. So I am a millennial who I've been online since Hot or Not, Friendster, LiveJournal, DeviantArt. Like I've been online, yeah. Tumblr. Yeah. And so when, TikTok got placed in front of me, I loved it. And I started talking into my phone. And I was talking about all of these social issues and the things that were happening in my life and what I was observing in my peers' lives. And I would see on my feed this really bad satire of like, har, 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 I have COVID and I'm doing all this stuff around the house and my husband has a little cough and he's laid up. And it was like, LOL, couples comedy, hashtag, or like, yeah. Oh, my husband can't find the scissors. And it just made me so mad.
You're like, no, your skin was crawling.
Absolutely. And so I started talking about that. And that's where my online platform really started to take off, was being mad about the jokes about what we were going through. And it just that's like the beginning of the launch of all of this. Yep. And over the last couple of years, I've just, it's been a conversation that's gotten louder and louder and more voices. And I just feel so grateful to be surrounded by so many people who are like, yes, this is it. We're changing things.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Yes. There's so many thoughts that are going through my mind at the same time. One is let me talk. So your account name is That Darn Chat. But when I noticed that, I was like, that's a play on the French word for cat. So it's like That Darn Cat, but That Darn Chat. So what was the inspiration behind that?
I wish I had a better story. It is a play on That Darn Cat. I actually had a different name online when I started going viral. I had like my, the username I've had since AOL. And
what was that?
I'm not even going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I had a video that got taken out of context. I posted it online. This is like before I took off, before people were following me.
Yep.
I made a video that made people angry. And it got on the front page of Reddit, and it had my username in it, which if you would have Googled it, probably would have brought up a lot of, I don't know, my history on Tumblr and, all that stuff.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And
yes.
so immediately,
you needed a break. You needed a separation from that.
Yes. And so That Darn Chat is actually a username that I love cats. I love the movie with Christina Ricci, which is the remake of That Darn Cat. I loved it. I think it was cute. And I used to use that username specifically in chat rooms and in like live streams that I would watch, and I would chat. And so
that makes sense.
That's it. That's the story.
I'm also a cat girl, so I'm with you. We have 3 indoor cats and 2 outdoor cats. So I'm with you. I'm a crazy cat lady. Yeah. I have more cats than I do children. So
there you go.
And my cats cause more problems. No, I'm just kidding. But going back to this conversation about domestic labor, this is going to sound dumb, but I'm really going to this is totally honest here. Until this conversation really popped off on TikTok during the pandemic, post-pandemic, I didn't even really have a name for it in the same way. Same thing with the mental load of motherhood, right? Like pre-pandemic and pre these conversations, I didn't really have the same awareness or the right awareness for that. Now, I'm older than you are. My son is 13 now. I was married in 2006. I had my son in 2012. He was in first grade when the pandemic hit. So I've been a mom for a long time. I've been on Instagram since February of 2016, making these parenting jokes, talking about parenting stuff since 2016, right? So like, it's been a minute. I've really seen the evolution of parenting jokes, of parenting content, conversations, like all of that kind of stuff. And I could tell you categorically that people were not talking about the domestic labor and the mental load of motherhood when I got on Instagram back in 2016, 2017, 2018. That stuff really hit later for two things. One, obviously Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, cracked that wide open. And that's when the conversations were starting to happen. And then the pandemic, when people were home and they were like, I have no escape from the day in and day out of doing all of this labor. And and that was obviously the same time of the rise of TikTok, right? So those two things were both the conversation and the popularity of TikTok were going simultaneous. And I'm grateful for that, because now here we are 5-6 years later, having these conversations even still and writing about them and talking about them and all of those things. And when my son was a baby and a toddler, I was also in that same space. I just didn't have the words for it or the awareness for it. So I'm so grateful for the work that you do, Laura, because you put terms to things that we're living through, but we don't necessarily know how to articulate.
Well, I appreciate that. It has been helpful. And serious shout out to Eve Rodsky. I found, and I mentioned it in the intro, Eve's book, Fair Play, came out in the fall of 2019. And I got it, like, I had to have gotten it within the first couple of weeks it came out. And I got the audiobook, and there's a section in her book where she lists the invisible labor. Like, she just, it goes on. I swear this part goes on for 30 minutes. It's just, she is just outlining every little thing.
There's so many bullet points. Yeah.
And it really pissed me off. I was so mad. And it was just so validating to hear somebody go, oh no, you're not making it up. Like, you're doing a lot. It's not being acknowledged. No wonder you are feeling like you're drowning, because you are.
Yeah, because you legitimately are. That's actually the case of what's going on. Eve was on the podcast a few years ago when Unicorn Space came out. Yeah. I don't know if you read Unicorn Space, yes. But I love that book. And I also always give a shout out to that one as well, because both Fair Play and Unicorn Space have meant a lot to me. So super, super important. There's one thing that you talk about. There's a lot of things you talk about, but one thing in particular that really stuck with me, it's the nag paradox.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to shed a little light on that?
Yeah. Okay. So the nag paradox is when someone says, just tell me what to do, which very quickly turns into, don't tell me what to do. So it really is the default example of how to split domestic labor that we're given, which is one person directs and the other person is directed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that turns into one person making more decisions, and the other person being told what to do or directed, corrected, managed. And I say that all without judgment language, kind of on purpose, because it is the default example that we're given. And we aren't told how to get out of that quicksand loop. And we end up working ourselves into a groove, especially if you, like I said, I've been with my husband for how long, and this is our pattern. And now my feelings are hurt because I don't feel heard, and his feelings are hurt because he's constantly being corrected. And it is very hard to climb out of. And it takes a lot of intention, and it's very damaging. And it can quickly become something very toxic. There's there's a line, and it gets real blurred and messy because our culture has normalized all the nasty elements of it.
Yeah. Why do you think, I mean, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do you think so many couples struggle with this?
I'll give a little bit of an answer, and then I want to hear what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Why do so many couples struggle with this? I think that it is what we've been told is the best. I think that it's a very heteronormative way of being. It's the air quotes here, traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's blatantly taught to us as this is the most natural, ideal way to exist. Yeah. That's just one thought, but I think there are a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely what it is. I think it's, the inherent patriarchy of the society is that how we grow up, and that's what many people have seen growing up, and then they have to unlearn what they saw as children and the modeling that goes into that. And so I think there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen to get to this point. It's interesting because for me personally, I'll use my family as an example. My parents were divorced when I was 2. I lived with my mom, who worked like 120 hours a week, every week for like 30 years. And then on the weekends, I saw my dad, who had like a 9-to-5 kind of job. Actually, in the beginning, he worked construction, but then later on, he had more of a 9-to-5 job. My dad inherently was much more, and I'm using this in quotes, domestic than my mom. He's a great cook. He was very fastidious and precise, ironed his clothes, like all of that, like was very neat, all of that kind of stuff. My mom, not domestic. She's a good cook, but not domestic and those other types of things. And so for me, I never grew up with that traditional sense. I mean, I knew that it existed because I watched TV and stuff and you see it on television. But for my day to day, I didn't have that traditional modeling growing up. My husband, totally different. His father worked, his mother stayed home. She's a hairdresser. He's in construction, like could not be more traditional if he tried. Right. So then we grow up and we get married. And now here we are of like, I had a sort of not traditional upbringing. And then he had this very traditional upbringing, and it's sort of making sense of that, but then also bringing him more to like maybe more of an untraditional way that I had seen, or sort of meeting in the middle, let's say. And I know that that's my lived experience, but that is not the lived experience of so many other families across the board.
Yeah, it's definitely, I hear that. I mean, I hear a variety of things, but I hear that a lot of like, we end up bringing unintentionally the examples that we have. And it conflicts in some ways and it aligns in some ways from the stories that we see on TV. And it's that cultural piece that you're talking about that I find really interesting. Did you watch TGIF? Like
I did.
Okay.
Oh, like every Friday. Very much, yes.
Okay, so like what did you have a favorite TV family or one that, or maybe
I liked Full House.
Okay.
Full House was my jam.
What did you like about Full House?
Oh my gosh, what didn't I like about Full House?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I loved Full House. I loved the girls. I loved Danny and Joey and Uncle Jesse, everyone living together in the mixed blended family. They weren't a blended family per se, but I love them all living in the house and their adventures. And, they didn't have a mom. They didn't have a mom that was doing the traditional things. And I guess maybe I sort of saw some of myself in that too.
Yeah, it is really interesting to like look at it close up, because those are families that, I think about like Step by Step, which is a little bit more of they were like kind of mean to each other sometimes. And like, it was like more of an edgy show, Step by Step. Yeah. And then, Full House was very like a lot of warmth. There's always like the happy ending. A lot of lessons. There was always,
there was a lesson, happy ending. Lesson, happy ending.
Always a moral thing. Yeah. And it is really idealized. And there's like a lot of domestic elements of that. And it's always like the neat and tidy and warm and cloth and softness. And we get those, like the warmth that we get from those TV shows, I think like bleed into how we picture what we want our lives to be like. And I just think it's so interesting to look at the TGIF, to look at how we think about our own families of origin and what messaging we're getting, like you said, from the Instagram, from the TikTok, because we are continuing to be influenced and continuing to see ourselves reflected back in the ideals and the normalization. And I think especially when we're just like casually scrolling on our phones, we aren't very intentional about how we consume this stuff. And we can unintentionally end up like doing those things, playing those things out in our own lives, again, without thinking about it. So I love that you are reflecting back on your relationship and talking about how you had to intentionally shift and really think about where you came from and what you want. I wish that was more normalized.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah, I when it's your own lived experience, sometimes like you just take things for granted. You're like, well, that's how I grew up and that's what I saw and that's what I was used to. And you don't necessarily like think that broader, but I think that makes a lot of sense. But also going back to what you were saying about being intentional when you're scrolling social media, I think I'm very intentional about the accounts that I follow. Yours, obviously, and Eve's and Libby and like so many other people who I love and respect and get a lot of really valuable information for this particular, and Abby, like just so many people that have like really great information about this topic in general. But what about you? I want to know about like, what was your background?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, my parents.
And what's your favorite TGIF show?
Yes, I was a TGIF kid for sure. My parents are divorced. They divorced when I was like in middle school though. And I'm the youngest of three. So I feel like I watched a lot of TV shows, where it was like a little bit beyond my, age.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
that totally makes sense.
So I think that I had, similar to what you're talking about, there were some role reversals. There were some things in my family that didn't align with the traditional expectations. And I got a lot of information from TV.
Yeah. Same.
But my husband also comes from a bit of a non-traditional background. And which I think is fascinating that we got together and sort of slipped into, like, it was so unexpected to me. I felt blindsided with all of these influences and these thoughts that I had and this like culturally critical feminist theory reading, all of that in the core of me. Mm-hmm. And then I end up like making meal plans and telling my husband what to do. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question, because no, it's not cool. But let me ask you a question. Did this happen after you had the kids, or was it different beforehand? And for us, my husband and I were different and more equal before my son was born. And then after my son was born, we slipped into more traditional roles, but now we're intentional and now we're equal. So it was like equal, not equal, equal.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I would say that, I've been thinking, let me start from the beginning here. My husband and I have both always been really passionate and very busy. And I think that we were able to have very independent personalities and hobbies and get together. And like it was a lot more balanced, and we were developing ourselves in a really balanced way.
Yeah.
But I always did more of the admin work, and he always did more of the execution and all of the, he had opinions that were not as strong as me. And that's how I framed it in my mind then. And that's how he framed it in his mind then. And that's, I think, one of those really subtle ways that we end up creeping into inequity is like, it's just like, oh, he doesn't care that much.
He doesn't care. So like, just let her do it because like, he's not bothered anyway.
Right. And I think that does us both a disservice, because he did have some opinions about things, but he didn't always think that he should, or he didn't always think that it was fair because he hadn't really thought about it as much. And I hate to say like I had to take a step back and he had to take a step forward, because that I think can be weaponized sometimes when we talk about fixing this. But that is really what needed to happen. I needed to be like, no, I really do want to know what you would like to do about the holidays. Like, I know what I want to do. Let me take a deep breath and really hear you out on this. And so it did take intention, but it has been that way. If I really think hard, there were subtle inequities from the start that got compounded. And then, yes, we had to dig ourselves out of it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. In the book, obviously, the title of the book is called No More Mediocre. What do you mean by mediocre? What do you mean by mediocre relationships? I want to sort of like explore that phrasing a bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the point is that it kind of makes you go, what does that mean? What does mediocre mean to me? And that's a point. I think that we have been oversold on a lot of things, on the college degrees or the career ladder or finding your little nuclear family. And I think we've been oversold. And there's been a lot of under delivering. So that's kind of what I mean by mediocre is we have been conditioned to accept less than we deserve. That is not, and the less than we deserve is a broad term. Your bar is going to be your bar. Everybody's circumstances are different. What is excellent for you may not be excellent for me. Even when you're talking about your mom, like what did she need to do in her household to feel comfortable there? What did your dad need to do in his home to be comfortable there? No judgment on either of them having those expectations. The mediocre might have been having to meet in the middle for them. And so separately might have been the life that was more than mediocre for them.
Yeah, that makes it's a good question. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, thinking about these types of relationships, mediocre relationships, regular relationships, and there's a lot of resentment that could be built up between both partners. And as a fair play facilitator, obviously you must see this quite a bit. How can partners address this resentment and how could they move forward?
Okay. I have a lot of answers to this. And actually,
good. I got time.
I actually shout out. I was talking to a therapist recently who put this in really wonderful terms. She used the word betrayal. And I think that is a really interesting framing of this dynamic and specifically about the mediocrity that we've been conditioned to accept. If a certain quality and feeling and fulfillment has been promised to us and we do not get that fulfillment and it's kind of like a bait and switch, we feel this betrayal. We have been lied to. And think about if you had a spouse who was lying or cheating or hiding, or they said they would do something and then they had no intention of actually doing that. That is a clear betrayal. And if you take that word and then put it into what happens in relationships, it might not be cheating, but it is an expectation of care. Yeah. We are told our entire life by every TV show, by every thing you scroll, everything is if you find your soulmate, you love each other enough, you're going to get your needs met. It's going to be great. Everything's going to work out. And that isn't real. That's like, and oftentimes the other person is set up to fail because nobody can meet all our expectations within one relationship. And so it's just like the perfect way of all of us to feel betrayed. And if you look at it through that lens, you can start looking at like, how do you heal from betrayal? You put it all out in the open.
That's super interesting because I've never heard using betrayal as the concept centering around that. So that definitely is a fresh perspective there. Yeah. When my husband and I were doing our pre-wedding course, I guess it was like my church had we were raised Catholic, so we got married in Catholic church, and it's a thing called pre-Cana, and pre-Cana is like the pre-marriage course. Anyway, we were there with a couple who have been married. I think they were married for like 50 years or maybe 50 or 60 years. They were an older couple, and they were the ones that were conducting this course. And they said to us, the greatest advice we have to give is keep your expectations low. You could keep your standards high, but keep your expectations low, because you never know if you're going to be able to have children. You don't know what that would look like. You don't know what your children are going to be like, personality-wise, health-wise, all of those things. And if you go into life with your expectations low, you won't get as disappointed. And my husband and I took that. And I mean, I've just sort of always have been like that in life. I'm generally an optimistic person, but I do like to keep my expectations low because I don't like to be disappointed. And that's what they were sort of saying. And they were saying within each other, like, keep your expectations of each other low. Although, yes, people, keep your standards high. One time I posted about this on social media, and people freaking flamed me. Yeah. Some people were like, I love that. I think that's amazing advice. Other people were like, they didn't understand it, and they were like missing the point. And they were like, you have to have high standards in life, and I don't want to keep my expectations low because I want all the best of everything. It's like, yo, do you think I don't want all of the best of everything? Of course, it's my own life. Of course, I want all of the best of everything. But I know not to expect that all the time, every single time, for every single engagement in life. And so I think that was a very interesting piece of advice, because here we are. My husband and I will be married 20 years this coming June. And so we've been married a long time. We've been together for 30 years. So we've had like a lot of people give us a lot of relationship advice, but I can definitely say that the manage your expectations is one of the best pieces that we've always kept in our little back pocket there.
Yeah. I like, the thing about social media is trying to boil down a concept into under 3 minutes and not knowing where it's going to go. And then it gets on the wrong side, and then you have to change your username.
Very much that. And this one, actually, you're going to laugh at me when I tell you this. This was pre-video on Instagram. Oh. This was written as text-based, because like on my Instagram account, I got started pre-video on Instagram. So it was like all text-based stuff. So this was like my recounting the story, and people even flamed it as written text.
Oh, man.
So aside from people flaming me on social media, what are your thoughts about expectations and managing expectations?
What it makes me think of actually is, so there are studies about relationship satisfaction, and there's this one that always gets me when it comes to domestic equity, which is like women from past generations who had less equity at home, like an imbalance of domestic work and childcare, were generally more satisfied with the setup than women today, even though there is overall more equity. And part of when you look into it is the fact that they expected it, and the women of today did not. A lot of them expect it. And again, it's that betrayal. It's that I expected this, and then a lot of times I was told I would have this, or that was even in our vows, and it's not happening. That is where the dissatisfaction comes from. And so I can understand how have your expectations low would come off, because low sounds bad, like a negative.
Yeah.
So if it was like, keep your expectations realistic, like
that's probably a better way.
Yeah. Because like none of us, I mean, especially, I just feel like my capacity gets smaller and smaller. But like
for mediocre or just in general?
In general, like myself, I just like cannot keep up, and that's okay. my expectations of myself were incredibly unrealistic, and of my partnership and of my partner and of my job and of my friends, like all of it was way too high. And so being more realistic, being clear about your standards or expectations, and then talking to your partner and being like, is that realistic?
Yeah.
Like,
I think, it's
helps.
interesting. You said standards and and expectations. I think they're two different things, because it's like you can have high standards, but then not necessarily have, I see them sort of as two different pillars.
I could see that. Okay. Well, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. What about in your household? Like, can you give me an example of a difference between a standard, maybe of yourself? Is that a kinder way? So you're not using someone else as an example?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's something of myself. I'm trying to think of what something would be. A high standard would be I'm just making this up though, because I don't do this, but I'm going to make this up. Going to the gym 5 days a week would be a gold standard of fitness, right?
Okay.
And the expectation is I would love to go 5 days a week. If I don't, I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
Okay. I like that. It's like a compassionate approach to yourself.
I'm very compassionate about a lot of things. And so that's how I sort of can parse out about different things, right? It's like, would I love to live in a $10 million house? Oh my God, yes. I want to live in a $10 million house. If I don't, I'm not going to cry about it.
Okay.
I'm grateful for what I have.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, having a definition like that. And I can understand, like, my standards, more so my standards shift. Like my standards shift because I don't like to be let down, like you were saying. So I usually adjust my standard to be closer to my expectation. Because if I'm like, I want to go to the gym 5 times a week, and I consistently know, like, I'm really not doing that, I will beat myself up about it. I'm not very compassionate with myself.
See, I'm gonna share my compassion, my self-compassion with you for that.
So that's
how I see it.
Yeah.
Yes. Would I want to drive a Ferrari? Yes. Am I happy with the car that I have? Also, yes. So that's sort of how I see it, as the difference between a standard and an expectation.
Okay.
I can't afford a Ferrari. Do I want one? Sure. But also, is it a total waste of money? Also, yes.
Yeah. It's kind of, I could see that. Like, because it's not even, it doesn't even seem like it's your goal. Like, it's a little, but would it be like what you aspire to?
Yeah. Like what I think I am worth. Maybe that's sort of a different thing.
Okay.
I don't know. Am I worth a Ferrari?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, one can have high standards and understand that you may not make it there. And that's okay too. So that's sort of how I sort of parse out the difference. Like, going back to the domestic labor and houses, like, do I want my house to be immaculately clean? Yeah, I do have a high standard of cleanliness in my house. Am I on my hands and knees with a toothbrush cleaning my baseboards? No, I'm not. I do keep my house clean and I do wipe down my baseboards, but I'm not, fanatically going over the baseboards with the toothbrush in the corner of the room.
Okay, that's fascinating. And so when I have coached, I've done, I love workshops. I love retreats. I love facilitating conversations and stuff like that. But I have also done work with like private clients, one-on-one, and with couples and small groups. But I've helped them set standards and have those discussions. And the way that you're talking about it here is something that it's an exercise that I do a lot. And actually, so it's talking about your preferences and priorities. That's the language I use for it. So yeah, I have like a high capacity goal standard, like you said, like the golden standard. I like that. Like I have a picture in my mind of what I want my household to look like. And if I could accomplish that, I would, like, all the time. And it's a scale from there. And like, if my husband and I have had, like around the holidays, this is perfect. Around the holidays, we will say, we had a conversation when my kids were very small. We were like, what are our priorities? We want to not be stressed out. We want to create some memories of like a few exciting things. We want to see family. We don't want to travel. We don't want to cook, but we will happily go to someone's home and like help them clean, whatever. We talked about our top priorities and actually wrote them down. Like, this is how we want our time together to feel. This is what we want the outcome to be. These are our values. This is what is valuable to us. And then from there, we went to preferences. And it was like the details of my preference is that we don't fly. That's a nightmare to fly during the holidays. But seeing family matters. So let's marry those two things together and we'll go in February. Like, we'll set time aside. We don't want to spend a ton of money. That's a preference of mine. My husband is totally fine spending a bunch of money around the holidays. And that sparked a conversation about like, okay, you want to spend a bunch of money? I will spend a bunch of money going downtown Chicago and doing a special lunch because that is my preference and your preference in there together. But when everything is really intense, or like one of us has had a huge crunch time issue going on, we could get rid of all the unnecessary elements and zone in on exactly what was important to us. And that golden standard, like, we had our North Star.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's the framework of like, if everything goes right, we're gonna hit this kind of maybe sort of realistic goal. Maybe it's where we aspire to be. And everything else builds up to that.
Yeah. I love that. And can I get my Ferrari? I don't know.
100%. Yes. Yes.
No, I love that. My husband and I speak about that kind of stuff a lot. We don't necessarily have a framework per se, but we are very intentional about how we manage our life and plan our lives together. So I love that. I want to ask one quick thing about using the word help.
Oh, man.
That's going to be like a whole nother half an hour conversation. But I just wanted to be able to like ask you, because I've seen so many videos and you talk about it in the book about using the word help.
Yeah. I mean, we both had like a physical response to hearing that. It's in so many ways it's the nag paradox. It's just tell me how I can help. Saying that means it was my job. That's what I interpret that as. So you're saying that I need to be the one in charge? I didn't ask to be put in charge. We didn't agree that I was going to be in charge. And it's this feeling of assumption, feeling of, sometimes it feels like being taken advantage of. It's having a job pawned off on you. Like, that's the resentment feeling that happens.
It's like the job was pawned off on you and now you're asking to help on this job that was pawned off.
Yes.
Because imagine like if you were at work and that happened, forget about domestic labor. Let's say that you were in an office building and something like that would happen. How could people of course people are going to be upset about that.
Yeah. It feels real passive aggressive when it's someone who is supposed to be your peer, which says a lot. When you get an assignment from a boss and you're doing a project together and you just go do your own thing and you say, if you need help, let me know how I can help. Then it's like, if I'm free, I'll help. Maybe I'll try to work it into my schedule. It's it just creates this inequity, and there is all this baggage to it. And what is interesting is, and maybe you experience this too, when you have sort of unpacked some of that resentment, and when you have begun to practice new patterns, and there's a lot more equity, and there's far less of like the can you help, or let me know how I can help, does not pack a punch the same way at all. Mm-hmm. Because there is a lot more balance of taking turns of, can you help? Can you help? Let me know how I can help is a sincere, I will show up for you. And in your absence, I know enough that I could step in, or I'm aware enough to walk into a room and know you well enough to help in a way that is actually helpful. There's this element of seeing each other that needs to be there.
Yeah, that comes sincere over time.
Yeah.
No, I agree. My husband has gotten to the point, and not that I'm bragging, but this is totally like a brag in a husband appreciation moment. He's gotten to the point on particular things where he doesn't even ask, he just does it. And I'm like, that's it. That was it. That's the goal. Like, just to go, oh, he's going to do laundry, or, oh, he did the dishes, whatever it happens to be. Like, that took a long time. That didn't just happen like immediately. And it came with a lot of awareness and a lot of things. I could talk to you for like 100 years, Laura. I really could, because there's so much to unpack with all of this, but I'm trying to be mindful of our time. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my podcast guests. What do you think is the biggest modern mom problem right now?
Oh, man. We're expected to do way too much with not enough resources. I think that's what it comes down to. The expectation is too high, and we don't have the support. It's unrealistic. That's
it. See, we bring it full back. I love a callback. Mm-hmm. I love a good callback. How can couples start to work towards more equity at home?
I really think that one of the biggest things is the work of the home has to be reframed as it is the work that builds our lives together. Mm-hmm. And if you chose to build a life with someone, you have to be invested in doing that work of building a life together.
Yeah, so well said. Laura Danger, where can everyone buy your book? Where could we follow you online? Tell us all the things.
Well, I'm online as That Darn Chat, all one word. LauraDanger.com, but you can get No More Mediocre wherever books are sold, including probably your little indie shop. And you can get it on audio, and you can get it on ebook and all that stuff. So anywhere.
I love it. I love it. Everyone should read this book. It is so, so, so important. Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.